Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we are once again going to dive deep into the classics of gaming. Today we're exploring a gem from the golden era of online gaming, the legendary Phantasy Star Online for the Sega Dreamcast. Now whether you're a veteran hunter like myself or a curious newcomer, you're in for a treat. Alright, so my first run-in with this game was a simple trip to Best Buy. Usually me and my dad always went on the weekends. It was kind of our thing that we did. Most of the time it was just fun to go look at new electronics because me and my dad were huge techies and, all around nerds. Sometimes we would buy something and other times we would just browse. This particular trip, however, I made a beeline to the video games, which most of the time I did. I had just purchased a Dreamcast not long before and I wanted to go see what games were available. Of course, the first thing I noticed when I get there is a huge display with several copies of Phantasy Star Online with a big bold sign that says new release. And of course, it just so happened to be December 21st, 2000, this exact day that the game came out. So I got there on the exact day it came out. And I remember freaking out internally because I had no idea this game was coming out. I've already had experience with the Phantasy Star series in the previous past. I started playing Phantasy Star 2, later moved on to 3 and 4. I never did have a chance to play the first game on the Sega Master System. I hear it's on a collection, so maybe that's something I'll look into. And yes, back in the day, Phantasy Star 4 did cost $100 on Sega Genesis. And yes, I ponied up the money for that. Now you can actually play those games on the Sega Genesis collection. I do believe that you can get it on Steam. I know it's available on Switch because I have it on there. But yeah, they've released so many collections over the years, you're bound to run into it. Now, also keep in mind, during this time frame, I had just graduated high school the year before. I was still working my first part-time job. I was in the process of moving on to more of a full-time job, so I didn't quite have the money to buy this game. I remember my dad walking over and going, "Oh, there's a new Phantasy Star game." He was perfectly aware of the stuff that I was into. Unfortunately, I did not have the money to buy it at that time, so I was like, well, I'm gonna have to come back on payday and pick this up. And I remember going out to the car to wait for him to come out because he did have something he was buying. Unbeknownst to me, he actually did buy the game for me, but I didn't find that out till 4 days later on Christmas Day. I remember waking up and checking my stockings because that was just a tradition my family had. You woke up and there was always something in the stockings. There it was, Phantasy Star Online, and you would not believe the excitement that befell me. I didn't even bother opening most of the other presents right away. I ran over to my Dreamcast. Of course, my dad stopped me and said, "You might want to open your other gifts first." One of the other gifts actually happened to be the keyboard for the Dreamcast because my dad knew this was an online game. Now, for a short period of time, I did play this game offline because at the time I was still living with my parents. I didn't really have a way to connect the Dreamcast online. Yeah, we had dial-up internet back then, but my dad did not want me tying up the phone line for hours and hours. So what I ended up doing was paying for my own phone line to my room and paying for my own internet service. Then I was staying up till 5 o'clock in the morning playing the game. Now that game has made a huge impact on me. I still have a friend that I know online that I still talk to this very day. Now, that's as much as I'm going to talk about with my experience because this game does bring up some negative memories. Nothing with the game itself, just memories of things that I don't want to talk about. So with that being said, let's get into the game itself. So the game was developed by the Sonic team, directed by Yuji Naka, who is also responsible for Sonic the Hedgehog. The game offered 3 classes: the Mighty Hunter, the Skilled Ranger, and the Mystical Force. Each class had unique abilities and playstyles, making teamwork essential for success. On top of this, you also had 3 species to choose from. You had the humans, which were a balanced race with strong potential and power and accuracy and techniques. So they were just your all-around. Humans are unable to naturally regenerate HP or TP, which was basically your magic points, and they cannot use traps. Then you have your Newmans, which kind of are the elf-like race. They're genetically modified, evolved humans. Newmans excel at casting, which is basically your magic, techniques. Rather than engaging in melee or ranged combat, they naturally regenerate TP, but only while standing still. And you have the androids, which cannot use techniques, basically magic, but they can use traps, and they are immune to poison and paralyzed status effects, and they do get a buff up of their HP and EXP stolen from HP drained weapons and things like that. Phantasy Star Online was great for its use of the Dreamcast built-in modem, allowing players to connect and quest together across the globe. The game's charming visual style, character customization, and addictive gameplay loop drew players in, forming a dedicated community that thrives even to this day. So let me go ahead and go through some of the things that made the gameplay so engaging and really what just made this game stand out at the time. It featured a main hub called the Pioneer 2, which was your main town. It was basically on the ship. You would travel across different servers where you can meet up with players in different lobbies, and it was pretty simple. You could hang out in the lobby and socialize. You could put up little emojis and talk to each other, and then when you decided you wanted to go on a mission or go explore, you can gather a team of 4 people and go down to the planet and explore. Usually there was a boss at the end. If you weren't taking on a mission, you could just go right on through and then beat the boss at the very end, and then you can rinse and repeat that process as much as you wanted. Now, I want to point out that there are different versions of the game, but in this video, I am mostly going to be talking about the original release on Dreamcast because that is the one that I have the most fond memories with. There was a version 2 that was released later on with some quality of life changes, and it also had other platform releases such as the GameCube and Xbox. It did get a PC release as well, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, in the original version of the game, there were only 4 areas you could fully explore to complete missions. For example, the first area was the forest area, and it had 2 sub areas. So you would go through an area, get to the end, and then you would go to a second little sub area within the forest, and then you would go through that until you hit the boss room. Also, most of the areas were unlocked until you completed the previous version. So when you first booted up the game with a brand new character, the only area available was the forest until you completed it, and then you moved on to the caves. That area had 3 sub areas, and then you would hit the boss room. Also, you had the mines with 2 sub areas and the boss room, and then finally you have the ruins with 3 sub areas and a boss room. And each of those areas, as you progressed, had higher and higher level monsters, and the difficulty went up just a little bit. Also, the game did include difficulties settings. For example, when you would go to the counter to go on a mission or just go down to explore the areas, you did have an easy and a hard mode, and if my memory serves me correctly, there was a very hard mode. On top of that, those were meant for as you leveled up into later levels. Now, in version 2, they did add some other areas in the game, but I never played that version all that much, so I'm not going to be touching on those. Now, speaking of some of the quality of life improvements they had in later versions, I want to point out something from the original not many people may realize. Those of us that played the original game on Dreamcast will remember this. There was a time that when you used to die in the game and you would respawn, it would drop your currently equipped weapon, and it would drop all the Mesta, which was the game's currency, you had on you at the time. Now, here's the problem with that. Other players on your team could also pick those up. The idea was meant for if you dropped it, your team could pick it up and hold on to it for you until you can come back to retrieve it. Therein lies the problem where if you didn't know these people or there wasn't a high level of trust, they can grab your stuff and easily log off, and guess what? Now that stuff is theirs. That brought on a whole nother problem of things because the Dreamcast version, the original Dreamcast version anyway, did not have any protections from hacking. That's right, people with a Game Shark could alter the code. For example, a lot of people were known for using a Force character, and they would use the Game Shark to alter the heal spell to do the exact opposite and completely deplete all your health. And they would do this while they were teamed up with you in town, so they could outright PK you right there in town, grab your stuff, and log off. Now, I really remember this being almost like a in-game event in a way. It kind of sparked this whole kind of side story arc. That's the way I thought of it. We were all banding together to try to figure out what can we do to stop these players, because at the time Sega had no real recourse against this. So the next thing you knew, there was a lot of other people using Game Sharks to turn the tides on these people to try to get other people's weapons and stuff back for them. So you had the good hackers and then you had the bad hackers on the other side, and it became a whole big thing for a while. Remember that whole thing kind of like dying off a little bit, and then you didn't hear too much about it, especially when people started just getting into teams and staying with people they knew and trusted, and then you started seeing less and less random people teaming up. Then of course version 2 came out and they completely fixed that issue. But keep in mind, at the time they had no real way to just patch it. The game was as it was on the disc. So let's talk about the mag for just a little bit. The mag was a little robotic companion you had in the game. It was kind of like a little pet that you can feed. So in certain intervals, you could check and see if it was hungry. And of course, the menu would be blanked out if you couldn't. But if it was available, you could feed it any item you wanted. Depending on the item you gave it, whether it be a healing item or something that restored your magic or anything like that, it would boost specific stats on the mag. And as long as you had that mag equipped to yourself, it would boost your stats. So it was kind of another way of leveling up. And your mag would evolve into different mags depending on the course of items that you fed it. I actually had a strategy guide that actually had a whole chart that told you what you could feed it to get it to evolve into other certain mags. And different mags had different effects and abilities, like an ultimate that you could go off, and it was usually different depending on which mag that you had. And it also gave you different stats depending on what mag you had or had evolved. You can even pick extra ones up later on to have other ones that you can swap out. I think one of the most remarkable aspects of Phantasy Star Online is its lasting impact in the gaming community. Like I said, I still have a friend online that I speak to, and I'm sure there's many of you out there that still have that one friend you played the game with. You know, it paved the way for future hits like World of Warcraft and even games like Destiny. And it really opened up the console market to online games. And to this day, even decades later, there are still fan servers and private communities that keep the spirit of Phantasy Star Online alive. There is a PC release called Blue Burst, which is basically the original game with all the extra added stuff that they added later on. It is a private server. Anyone can sign up on this, and it is totally free. So if that is something you all would be interested in watching me stream, because doing this video is really kind of giving me that itch to play the game again. Now, I may do more videos on down the road about the future versions, or maybe even some of the sequels, the other Phantasy Star Online type games that came out, but I just wanted to focus on this original release in this particular video. But I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. So whether you're reminiscing about the good old days or discovering this game for the first time, I hope you enjoyed this nostalgic journey back. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more retro gaming content. And as always, I will see you in the next video.